Today we're going to talk about how and why the Rolex OP41 in green is probably the best and most relevant OP in 2022, and then I'll give my thoughts on the watch itself. In 2020 we had the late launch of the Rolex releases, thanks to everything going on. I think it was August or September when we finally got the new watches, and that was basically the new Submariner and the new Oyster Perpetuals with the colorful dials. So this OP41 green was among the colorful dials. The most hyped ones were of course the Tiffany, pastel blue dial, and the pink one, although that was 36 millimeters, so not so much. But in terms of the 41s, so it was the pastel blue, and then the coral red and the yellow, and then came the green. So the green was kind of the least hyped watch. I mean, naturally so, because it was a solid color and not a pastel. We've seen green dials, and there are green dials in the market, whereas there are currently no yellow dials or the other colors. So naturally the others were hyped, and blue, as usual, does really well. Pastel blue was always the hottest one, until later in 2021 when we had the Tiffany auction of the Tiffany Patek for over $5 million. And then what happened was, for some reason, everyone wanted the OP41 with the pastel Tiffany colored dial as well. It was not based in any logic, but most of this watch market madness is not really based on logic, so there's that. So that blew the top off the Tiffany, and that became astronomical, and then it did calm down later. But again, in 2022, with the new releases in April, the new discontinuations of the OP watches, particularly the pastel colors, which was surprising, because I think Rolex had seen that the 4 people they wanted to get their watch had gotten theirs. I'm sweating a lot because it's 30 degrees and it's humid as hell. So these OP41s with the colorful releases were intended to entice new buyers, particularly targeted towards the younger generations, because of the colors naturally. And it's the basic entry-level watch, no complications. It's the easiest to wear, it's the easiest to not have to be a watch guy to deal with. So for those reasons, and for the cost reasons as well, these watches were supposed to bring in a new set of buyers. Instead, it now resides among the highest end collectors because of the market values. And I think it was kind of silly of Rolex to discontinue that, because they just fed into this machine. So in 2022 onwards, we're stuck with green. Green is the theme. It's been the theme for so long. I'm surprised that Rolex wants to continue on that. It makes sense, but it's also kind of strange. I don't know their obsession with green. So even the speculated discontinuation of the John Mayer Daytona, that did not happen. We still have that green dial. So these are the 2 main green dials, along with the new Datejust green that they released. So they're still really sticking with that theme, and so the only really special colorful OP41 that there is, you would assume that the continuation of this watch would be beneficial to the market and collectors in terms of reducing values and making it more attainable, but I don't think that's going to be the case with this watch, particularly with the softening of the market and Rolex taking a bath with their GMT Masters, the Daytona, and some of the precious metal watches as well. This particular one, here's my reasoning. It's not fact, it's just what I think. I think because people still have a glimmer of hope in terms of getting this piece through an AD, that there will always be so much demand for it, which there wasn't before. The reason for this is because everyone going to their AD asking for an OP when we had the pastel colors, their least desirable or least picked one would typically be the green OP. Now there's no choice, so all the people that were after the pastel colors or after an OP in general kind of have to settle with the green. So I think the demand for the green one is going to be a lot higher through the ADs, and naturally that's going to help the secondary market as well, because ADs can't fulfill the demand. So now we're going to see a rise in demand for the 41mm, although if Rolex can make more watches, I still don't think it's going to come close to the actual demand for that watch now. So I do think it's probably the hottest OP in 2022 at least. It's definitely the most colorful one, and it's definitely the most special among the bunch. So that's just some reasoning and logic applied to it. That's my take. I'd like to hear what you think about those things. So now let's actually move on to the watch. So the OP41 comes in a diameter of about 39.5 millimeters. This was a very debated thing in 2020, but I think some people have really measured it out well and discovered that there's not that much change diameter-wise compared to the previous 39 generation models. So it's 39.5 millimeters in diameter, but the lug-to-lug distance has been increased at 47 millimeters, a little bit more than that. That's a 3 millimeter increase over the previous OP39, which was around 44 millimeters. So that's the significant change, and that actually does change how it wears on most people's wrist, because the diameter is not that important as long as the lug width remains small, since this is the issue, not so much this. On my wrist, as you can see, I find it extremely wearable. It's a great size, mainly because of the case dimensions. So it's not just about these two measurements, but also the case thickness. It's quite sleek and slender on the wrist. The side profile of the case is not slab-sided like the Explorer 2. That's quite thick and noticeable because it's really flat and it's like a hockey puck. The bracelet, I love the bracelet. I really like this unpolished center link bracelet. I think it's much better than the polished center links bracelet, especially on this kind of watch. It really warrants that. It's not a dressy piece. And I do think even on the GMT Master 2, there should be the option of having a non-polished center link Oyster bracelet. For retail, this is an amazing bracelet. I think this is where you get the value for the watch. It is a simple watch, simple dial. For retail, the movement is also a great value proposition because it's in all their watches, including Submariner, all their time and date watches. So it's a fantastic movement, 70-hour power. You know those things are not that relevant when we talk about Rolex. So it's more of how the watch wears, how it's perceived. In terms of how it's perceived, it's not that flashy, and that's a good thing. It goes unnoticed because that dial is not overly reflective. It's a darker shade of green, but it's still very punchy in the right light. And during daytime, it's a fantastic shade. At night, it just kind of gets closer to black. That makes it really wearable. It's not that noticeable, and having no complications makes it an easy wear. You don't have to set the date every time you want to wear it. That's one of the things I appreciate about that. I don't really care about the symmetry as much. I know a lot of people are happy with the lack of a date complication just for that reason, but that's not my concern. The taper of the bracelet as well, it's a really nice taper, but the thing is, at 21 millimeter lug width, that's not all that versatile and desirable. You can't swap it out. You don't have as many options to swap the straps, which I don't like, but I don't know if the 20 millimeter design would have actually looked weird or disproportionate, and I guess that's one of the sacrifices with the newer sizing. Despite being green, this is one of the more wearable watches that Rolex makes, and it's more discreet. It's weird calling one of these pieces discreet, but it actually is. If you're not that much of a watch enthusiast, you would not recognize this watch so easily. And that's one of the best things of the OP lineup. It's an entry-level watch, and it's simple. It's not about being flashy. The reason I think they have these colors in the dial is to include non-watch enthusiasts, give them a reason to buy one of these watches. And everything about the watch makes it very easy to use on a daily basis for a non-watch enthusiast as well. And that's quite nice. The funny thing is that you don't really need to be a watch enthusiast to get one of these, but the people that end up getting them are very high value collectors, or people who buy it purely for the investment aspect of it, which is kind of a funny paradox. I don't have a problem with it. It's just an observation, and it's a bit funny and odd. So in 2022, this is the hottest OP that you can get, and I think that will remain the case for a while, at least till we see the releases in 2023. So right now the watch market is kind of soft, and if the market is to pick up, then I think if you're considering an OP, this is the one to keep an eye out for, especially as we get closer to the end of the year where there's more sales, more hype, and rising prices. This watch that you see on screen belongs to Watch 10. They're a watch dealer in Hong Kong. I'm also friends with them. If you want to check out their stuff, it's in the link below. That's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. Cheers.